So welcome to today's fitting, here with Ben Foulis, who's a previous client of ours, strength conditioning trainer, as you can tell. My muscular frame clearly matches Ben's. But taking a look at irons where we've built stuff in the past for you, kind of blade, CV combo, but looking for something, I believe, with a little bit more margin.
Yeah, a little bit more forgiveness. Just a couple of European trips with the lads kind of let me down playing this. And I've kind of been playing some good golf, but as soon as the swing starts getting off, you're in a bit of trouble because you miss the centre of the face with blades and you're losing 10, 15 yards, and that's often cost me some shots. So I think it's time to accept, drop the ego, accept what I actually need for my game and
got it.
more sensible.
So as we built these a few years back, we'll take a little benchmark, have a bit of a chat, take it all from there.
Lovely, sounds
Great
good.
stuff. And prior to this set was that the set of old blades that you were?
No, that was a really old set of Ping G25s.
Okay,
When I
right,
came in
yeah.
here, it was Matt I saw at the time said they were game improvement rocket launchers.
Yeah.
So they really were missiles and they would fly high. So as soon as we got these, I liked them because came out our lower window.
Yeah.
And just if you did hit one off, it wasn't going to spin off the planet.
Yeah.
Because that was the drawback to the Pings. And they were, I think they were the first set of irons I had for about 7 or 8 years. So they had more than they'd run their course. And I think
That's the thing is that the speed you're at, I mean, thinking that one 101 mile an hour, that's where the kind of the more game improvement designs aren't necessarily geared towards that speed, particularly when you get to the mid to shorter irons. You've got a bit of face flexion, and therefore you get the odd cannon out of it. You're going to get a little bit of spin variation where the face is just loaded a little bit more, and therefore the percentage error might be the same as someone at 70 miles an hour. But of course, you're then 30% more of a distance disparity as well. So,
because those things, as much as they were good for the ego because they flew miles, it just meant at times that just the ball was just gone. Anything that was slightly off was well gone. That's not good.
and anything swing-wise that you're working on at the moment, or that you can consistently find yourself going back to?
Coming shallower. The kind of tends to have, over the past year, have gotten a bit more steep, which has meant to come over the top and just spinning them massively. So on the top of the backswing, trying to make sure there's more depth with the hands to then get me a little bit more inside.
Yeah.
Which, in kind of having done that last couple of months, it's occasionally seen it flip and go left. But kind of finally, last few practice sessions have felt pretty good seeing that fade again. So
Yeah, it's past pretty neutral.
ugh.
Okay, let's get a couple more would be good.
Yeah, try and hit one online. It's better.
Okay. Yes, one more shot would be perfect.
Yeah, so that's the sort of the level of fade I'd quite like to see.
Yeah. Is that something you generally always played left to right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Something that I always felt that I just had more control on can hit the draw.
Yeah.
There's always that concern of it just flipping. And
Yeah, and where you've quite clearly got a lot of fast twitch fibers in you. There's a lot of snap of speed, and the problem with them playing the right to left is that left to right you can manage the face and hold it square and snap through and not kind of lose the face. Yes, it can overfade, but that's then landing soft. If you're going the other way and you get a bit of a snap, the toe speed, that rotation rate starts to get up pretty high, and then that becomes the uncontrollable one that goes left, 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 left. Yeah. But the distance control as well starts to become quite tough. So feel free to pop over. I'll run you through numbers here. So take a funky one out there. But I mean, ultimately, interesting to see the strike point. If I look at all of these, you know, it's not particularly getting toe side. There might be the odd one potentially. I think what it is when you're at your kind of speed and there's that acceleration pattern where it's a fast kind of crack of the whip speed, a real sort of snap, is that it does amplify things a little bit and spin's a bit high. I guess a bit high. You're a pretty strong angle of attack, so you're going to produce lower launch and a bit more spin than most, which means when it gets to sort of springtime, balls can rip off front of greens and false fronts and things pretty quickly. So you know, there are things with a ball that one can do to kind of mitigate that a little bit. But there's a little bit left in the tank from an efficiency point of view. You know, the variables in terms of spin, if I go out of that, you know, the tolerance there is really pretty tight. So it's more, as you alluded to earlier, it's more a little bit of strike point. If we can tighten that up a little bit, there's a bit more efficiency to come from that too. And then there's the odd one. That one got a little more into out and drew, but it's not kind of like face angles all over the place. It just generally looks like if we can tighten it up a little bit, just from a balance point of view, dead weight, so that it just looks like it's almost with you at impact, and there's a little bit of feeling for strike, and that should then just, you know, tighten up that a little bit, and then maybe mean that you're in principle used to stay a little bit more stable and then tighten up the strike point a little bit. But if we can give you something that gives you a little bit of margin for error, and so that's not exactly a bad heat map from a strike point of view, but you're being maybe disproportionately punished for that. So it's not like there's anything wildly off, and so based on your angle of attack being pretty strong at 7 degrees down, that's not a crazy spin, but it'd be nice to rein it down a little bit. Yeah. But just making sure that the difference between a good and a miss is just tightened up a little bit. But yeah, definitely a little bit more all round we can get. So first change here, haven't actually gone lighter in the first change, I'm just changing the balance point a little bit, just evening it out a bit, but also it might just feel a little bit tighter. I'm just interested to see how that slight shift in weighting changes your patterns. So it's by going to a composite, actually evens the weight out a little bit more. So rather than getting the balance, I mean, these aren't a tip weighted shaft, but it just makes it a club a little bit more, rather than almost, might sound like a daft comment, kind of club head on the bottom. It just to me looked like you were just having to almost work the club back to the ball a little bit, fractionally. Okay.
That's a pretty good start.
Yeah. So I'm ball speed's up straight away.
Okay.
And obviously distance spins down, yeah. But it just looked like it arrived with you a little bit more. Just if I was going to exaggerate where we were before, it almost had that little bit of having to do that to get the club head back to the ball, which is just where, so we'll see over a few shots whether it happens with this, it's just where it just looked like the club face just had a little more variation than I wanted it to. You know, and for someone who's, you know, physical ability is pretty good. It's those little, what do you call them, almost the compensations, just look like they need a little bit of tidying up.
Yeah.
Okay. So strike went off a little bit, but that's still, I'll see one more of this.
Balance of the shaft feels pretty good.
Yeah, still a tidy-ish line through the back of the ball. There was that little bit of the...
I think some of the tapes just...
I'll leave it off for the minute. I'll fine-tune that shortly. Okay. Okay, it's a good start point. Kind of quite like where that's at, so I definitely don't want to go heavier. I'm going to now just bring that dead weight down a little bit. So essentially we know we don't want to go heavier, it's just finding out where we bottom out.
Okay. It's thin, very thin.
It's what you call commercial. Yeah, so that one, like, that's come off the face well, but coming into the ball, you can see it just got away from you through the shot. So kind of look good halfway down. As you kept building speed with it, it then got that draggy one left, which I don't want. So I'd want to, you know, where you're, you know, don't want you to have to rein it back. Don't want you to have to actually absolutely smash it, but equally speaking, we kind of need the club there for you to hit against. So it's just a little light there.
Cool.
Right. Okay.
So is that a little light in the head, or is that
shaft weight?
Okay.
So I took it down just over 10 grams, so enough to, you know, should have made a noticeable difference.
Yeah.
So I'm going to just get 2 or 3 that are, you know, we're looking at a fairly tight weight distribution through the shaft, but also dead weight window of about sort of 7 or 8 grams. But the balance, we can't let it get tip heavy, otherwise as you fire, it's just going to leave the club head behind, and then you're going to have to Zorro it to try and square it up. So if we keep the club a unit, you can rotate and collect the ball and then leave the face there. The moment you've got to then collect the face and kind of find the ball at the head again, that's just going to spread the face to path numbers all over the shot. Okay, nice.
This one feels a lot closer to what I'm currently playing. Would that be right in saying that?
Yeah, it's the same series of shafts, just 4 or 5 grams lighter.
Okay. Yeah.
And swing weight's a little bit lighter as well.
Ooh, it's a heel strike.
Not quite. Okay, let me just change that a little. Yeah, I think by dropping weight, I'm not sure that, again, the more you start to gain a bit of trust and confidence, I think it's not that you change your speed that much, but you commit through the swing fully. So I think if we drop, maybe we drop under the, at or just under the 100 gram marker, it just loses, there's just not enough club to use in the swing, if that makes sense. Yeah. It's kind of gets away from you halfway down, so the club doesn't kind of keep taking you down to the bottom of the ball.
That felt nice. I don't know whether it's going to reflect that in the numbers, but
yeah, good contact.
yeah, both of those I felt like I've just been able to let the club drop into the ball instead of trying to feel like I'm pulling at it. Like,
and just pushing the weight up a few grams again, you can see it basically the mass keeps taking you down to the ball rather than it almost sort of rather than almost kind of flick the club through the ball. It doesn't. That's where they go thin contact wise. When the weight's there, you tend to get to the bottom of the ball better. Okay. Yes, even that last one wasn't kind of middle. It still retained good ball speed. Okay, that's good. I'm actually going to switch. What I want to test is based on that theory, I want to test same shaft but a little less head heavy. Okay, great. It's interesting. The actual, so that one the strike was a little bit more off. The actual face angle control looks slightly tighter with this, but the strike was a little more consistent with the other one. Interesting enough.
Okay. I wonder whether I rush into that one though. Just kind of hit too quickly. Yeah, I feel like the weight of the one that we saw earlier was preferable, but I mean the dispersion of those, even on an off hit, was pretty good.
Okay. Let's see if we can merge it down. I'm just going to put this one other shaft in just to see whether it's. I'll see where its swing weight's first, because I definitely don't want to get the swing weight moving up. Okay, yeah, it's just going to swing a little tip heavy. Right, let's get that there. So I don't want to artificially bring the head weight down. So let's just put this one back in. And it is one of those things when everything's, when you go from, so most people's 6-iron speed would be kind of 80 to 85, probably on average. You're putting at least 20% more through that. Actually, that acceleration kick up, the rate of acceleration kicks up that much, therefore it amplifies any change. So if you were kind of a longer, languid, kind of a less of a sharp snap, then it would be less affected, but you're more affected by, a gram in the head actually creates more momentum, more change in timing than it would for someone at a kind of a more inverted commas normal kind of club speed. So actually those real fine tunes in swing weight will make a bigger difference to consistency of certainly managing the club face and managing the shot pattern for sure. So it just means the day to day, if we tighten that up a little bit, then it's more manageable day to day. So if we then give you a head that has a little bit more margin of error as well, both bits just mean there's less going on at the bottom to have to kind of find that kind of strike point and find square. It'll be easier to play, kind of to manage your game across a number of rounds rather than sort of having to find it every time.
Yeah, that is a feeling at the moment. That is what I feel like I'm heading into the range prior to playing to find it.
It's interesting. Going back to that, just looks like the handle. I mean, like it's good. Just looks like the handle's just that little bit behind.
I feel like I'm fighting to pull the club face into the ball with those instead of letting that. Like I said earlier on, I used the term like just feeling like I'm letting it drop.
Yeah. I'm going to go back to that Oban shaft. Let's see, this is the one that you felt you could just sort of drop into the back of the board earlier. So let's see whether that still retains that feel.
So that was pretty good.
Yeah.
Even that was off balance as well. I felt my left foot kind of stumbling all over the place then as well, and that's still, to come out like that is promising.
Yeah, it is interesting with this one. What we're actually seeing is a tighter, I think a tighter dispersion front to back. It'd be interesting to see if I close those down. I'm looking at kind of tolerances on these. 3.5 yards, 5.5, 4.5, 4, with a lighter one, 8. Current one 4, but we're also gaining, with your existing one, you're at kind of 134 ball speed, 134 efficiency. We're now at 138 on both, so club speed the same. We're broadly speaking the same dead weight. You're moving at the same pace, but actually just getting a more representative distance. Spins a little bit, well, my terminology, quieter. It's just a little less flary in terms of spin. But but let's see, line's pretty good, 0.8 into out, 0.2 on the closed on the face angle, tolerance 1.5, where with that, yeah, so the numbers are very good as an average, but you've got a 2 degree tolerance on path and a 2.5 tolerance on face to path with your current ones versus 0.7, 1.7, so we've tightened those up a little bit. Still think that can maybe I think that can tighten up a little bit more as you get a little more comfortable with not having to save it. There's one shot there that drew a little bit. That was actually the strongest hit. But if we take that one out, you're down at 1 degree face to path tolerance. So there's actually starting to see that really kind of quieten off and dial in. Everything's just tightening up, tightening up, tightening up. And we're seeing that efficiency kick up. So I think with that one, yeah, it's a very, very slight tweak versus your existing setup. But we're not just seeing the range of variation in 250 revs on spin. That's still very, very good. But more efficiency and less front to back dispersion. And we can certainly kind of dial that up. Should be able to dial that up a little bit more with a head that gives you, doesn't need a lot, but a little bit more. Margin of error just means then off centre just a bit more efficiency maintenance. So but definitely like where we're at with the shaft. But we're looking at 2 or 3 grams, a couple of grams, fractional change in balance point, slightly lighter head even with your matching existing shaft. I mean that's still pretty good, but the drop off on the miss is a little bit more. So just seeing a bit more variation. It's not a bad option, but we're definitely seeing better efficiency out of the CT, moving that a little bit quicker. So I think the average is there, 100.7, 99.4, pick up a mile an hour or so now. We're not trying to find extra speed for you, but it just means you're moving a bit freer. So that, if we can work on the head just to tighten that up a little, tighten that bit up a little bit more, and certainly give you the feel that something's not kind of twisting around the shaft if it gets a little bit off centre. But certainly a good chunk of the way there by making a fractional change on dead weight and just a very, very slight tweak, half a point to about a swing weight point on swing weight, about a swing weight point. So, fine tunes, but certainly seeing that that dispersion tighten up. And if I take on here, so I want to take all the extraneous stuff off to go to put on carry. So you can see, the patch is exactly the same loft, exactly the same head, give or take. It's a newer series of it, but we shifted everything up a little bit. And yes, there's one long left there, but we haven't got the drop off and the drop off right quite as much. So if you're not having to work the head quite as hard, that's then allowing you just to kind of leave the face there, which should then lose that one that goes a little longer left. But then with these, you suddenly have to allow for that shorter one here, and then a nuke that goes up there, then all of a sudden you've got a very long back to front, whereas these, there's really not a lot of back to front tolerance there, which is good. So it's a nice change. Right, let's have a look at some heads. So this one's the Cobra, the King Tour. So it's got a little bit of perimeter weighting, a little bit of polymer in the back just to kind of soften the sound and the feel down. Nice, neat profile, head shape wise.
Yeah. It looks good looking down on it. That was a pleasant surprise because I was looking up expecting that to go left. To be, what's that, 3-4 yards left of target?
Technically it has, but we're looking at 9 foot.
Yeah, you'd take that.
Watch one more, but maybe not quite getting into the bottom of the ball as well. Yeah, interesting. That's not collecting it as well. Let me just change that up a little.
That one I tried to get into my lead side a bit earlier. That tends to be a swing fault of mine, is not getting into the left side earlier. Okay. So I tried to. I think I just went way too early on that one. Hence the awful strike. First one of the day.
It's interesting, even the sound of it though didn't sound like it was getting into the ball as well as the CB was. So it's funny, you've got all the tech, but actually the sound at the strike is quite a giveaway a lot of the time.
Oh wow, it's got way left. Yeah. That felt like there was a ton of weight in the toe. I don't know whether that's right or wrong.
There's a little bit more.
Okay,
definitely a bit more weight in the toe. Okay, interesting. I mean, it's interesting. It's certainly, it sounds a bit of contact.
Yeah.
I'll watch one more and I'll change head just to test the theory on this. But it is interesting how that one, the club face controls, that's noticeably different.
Yeah, that one's pretty good.
Okay, so I'm gonna change the head there. So sounded a bit of contact in the last, but nowhere near the same face control on that. So I'm going to go into a head that has a little bit, it's got a little bit of perimeter weighting, but it's still got a mass in the centre, rather than just a lump of tungsten in the toe, which the Strixon head does have that little bit of tungsten in the toe, which could just isolate the balance out on the head end. It was a fraction on the strong. It's still a little lighter than your current ones, but a fraction on the stronger side from a swing weight point of view, which might amplify it a little bit, but that was a really marked change. Okay. So this one going into the PXG 317T. Okay.
It's with this one, I've not felt like the club head is shutting on me.
I think it's moving better. Just that bit of spin there. Okay. I wonder, interesting. So face control much better.
Yeah.
It's, we're losing a little bit of efficiency. So I'm going to go to essentially a similar series, one that's not a hollow structure, just to see if we take away that kind of, well, I'll say hollowness, take away a little bit of that perimeter weight, does that actually give you a little bit more solid contact again?
Yeah.
So essentially same series, but the CB. So we haven't got quite as much perimeter weighting on this. Because if your strike point is centre to heel, then actually the more forgiving you go, the more weight that goes into the toe of the club, the perimeter actually moves the centre of mass from more towards the very centre of the club face, whereas actually if there's nothing in the head, if it's just a single piece forged blade where there's no tungsten in the toe and the sweet spot, the centre of mass is slightly heel side because of the weight of the hosel. So if we put the weight too far in the toe, then actually potentially that misses the bit that you're striking.
Yeah. That one felt good.
So what's interesting, it's spinning a bit more. Potentially ball speed's a little more stable. I'm going to get the do one of the tests with the Mizuno where it doesn't have a lot of tungsten toe weight, but it has a little bit of perimeter weight again, just to compare that one.
That felt nice.
So the interesting bit with this, ball speed's pretty good. Spin's got pretty high.
Yeah.
Really kicked up. So actually, where it's not heavily toe weighted, granted there's a little bit of, it's a slightly lighter face, it's a little bit of perimeter weighting, it's not got a tungsten lobbed in the toe of it. Actually, ball speed maintenance solid, but both of those are pretty darn high on spin. I'm just going to put that CB head back on. Let's see if we go back to that, what happened. I'll see one more before, but I mean, it spins straight back down. I don't know, it's maybe a hair
There's a
clean,
hair thin, yeah.
but very different spin profile.
That was more compressed. I think that's going to drift a bit right.
Yeah, spin's nowhere near as high. So
Okay.
yes, you say a little squeeze, little in front of, so it's drifted right, but it's 5.8 on 7,000. So I'm checking the lofts and all these. So it's not like that's changing. It's purely the construction of the head. And whether it's an accumulation of your rate of acceleration, mass position change, and therefore the way that interacts with the strike point and the spin. Nothing's beaten this head from a flight point of view. So what we are seeing is that the bit that's getting the club face under control, certainly the left-right dispersion pattern better, is a slight shift in balance of the clubs and a fractional shift in dead weight in the shaft. Head-wise, I'm not seeing anything that stands out to me as being, oh, this is miles better, or noticeably better. I mean, yeah, you can say, well, yeah, there's, more forgiveness available in a 4-iron, but actually, it's, I like that last one, there's a stripe on that last one, a hair low on the face, but it's keeping, that head's keeping the spin stable. Previous shot, slightly heel side, but again, your kind of strike pattern with that combination is pretty central and maybe a little bit lower on the face, but that's something where actually if you can get that slightly shallow from a plane delivery, then you're going to get into the bottom of the ball a little earlier and flight it up a touch more, potentially. But it's the consistency results out of that. I mean, looking at the Mizuno, 7,000 on the spin. The BXG had a strike point pretty good, 6.7 on spin. The 6.2 on spin. So there's the Cobra rotten on ball speed for you. So actually going back to that combination, it's a good heat map from a strike point of view. Yes, in an ideal world we get a hair higher up the face, but the stability of the spin and the ball speed, and therefore the overall results, more consistent.
Yeah.
So at this point we're looking to go, well, do we actually need to do anything with the heads? Is it actually just getting the delivery pattern just tidied up that little bit, that then the more and more you play them, hopefully that will just be the case of the strike point getting up the face a little bit, and then seeing that little bit more launch. Spin will stay pretty similar, but we're still, from a spin point of view, if I go back into these, what we're wanting to see, we're still getting the spin a little bit better than your existing ones.
Yeah.
So launch angles a bit higher with your current ones, but that's then producing a little bit of a floatier, weaker flight.
Is this where we possibly need to consider going CB across the entire set and just getting rid of the pitch and wedge, the 7-iron in the numbers?
I mean, Possibly. It's.
I don't know whether it's just a confidence
It's
thing.
a very marginal thing.
In my head.
But yeah, it would be from that standpoint. You know, technically, the mass sits just that little bit higher up. But if it's from as you say, from a confidence point of view, if that gives a little bit more confidence with them, then it's an immeasurable bit, but it might just make that little more of a difference. Having said that, does it need it if we start to get better results, tighter left-right dispersion, tighter front-back dispersion, through just a slight tweak in the setup and the shaft? Does that then give you the confidence anyway? You can find an argument both ways. One would be to say, well, if we just tweak that shaft and balance setup, see how much difference that makes. We've always got the option of switching the heads on the bottom end if you decide you want to, because we can just change those heads down the line. The bore depths on the blades and the CBs, I'll double check with the workshop to make sure I'm not false speaking, but between something like a T100 and the CBMBs, yes, there's a bit of a difference in bore depth, but I think CBMBs are very similar. So both are an option. I'm not sure, I don't think I'm seeing enough tangible difference from the heads to say, right, let's change the heads. I think the shaft facilitates a tidy delivery that then potentially helps just if you can get a little less steep on the angle of attack, then in the longer end of the irons you're going to see a little bit more pitch of flight. The fact that we're getting a better spin, we might well also just be able to rein the loft up a little bit just to bring that launch angle up a touch, say particularly at the very top end, because that 4-iron at that sort of delivery is going to be a real bullet. But I'm not seeing anything that makes me feel like spending money on new heads is the way forward. It's slightly tidying up the delivery with a marginally different shaft setup, but beyond that, I'm not seeing enough benefit to say, yeah, let's change heads. So in this instance, from my point of view, it's very reassuring, as you then just said a moment ago, how similar the spec is. It's a real fine tune from the build before, but it just goes to show actually how little fine tunes, over a course of a couple of years, a little bit of timing change can just dial that back in a little bit more as well. But we're looking at a couple of grounds on the shaft, fractional balance point change, but just say tidies up delivery a little bit. But actually tangible difference.
It feels good. Like, it's reassuring. It again gives me the confidence that when I came in the last time, they fit me with the right clubs. Over 2 years, swings changed. I've got a bit quicker, and naturally, that's going to mean that something's slightly off. So I come in, get a recheck, and it's minimal the change.
And your patterns are particularly sensitive to, because of the speed of acceleration rate. And the way you kind of work through, there's a bit of a kind of collecting rotation to the ball that amplifies changes up. So you're going to see a notable difference a little bit more readily than someone with one might say a quieter action, because for you if it's not where it needs to be at the right point, then there's a little bit more you've got to do to manage that. Whereas if you've got a kind of more gradual build up of speed and a kind of quieter move through the ball, well, there's a bit more room for manoeuvre, a bit more margin of error. Whereas for you, it's either there or not there. And that's probably where you're finding that day-to-day, round-to-round fatigue through the course of we'll call it fatigue through the course of a golf trip. Chaps, you all know what we mean. Then actually, you're just going to be a little bit more sensitive to your timing, having a bit of variability, whereas knitting that back together just means it's arriving a little bit more cleanly, a bit more with you, so then should mean that the differentials between the start of the week and the end of the week are a little bit less. So,
I love it.
So, some really kind of nuanced changes here. Not necessarily going to be relevant to many people being 100 mile an hour, but actually kind of shows how sometimes a slightly less forgiving club head and a more centralised mass can be more beneficial than spreading it all over the face. So don't always assume that more forgiving is going to be better. So, interesting lesson.